a bit about my car.
This is my 2002 Audi TT. It's a 225, and I bought it about 2 years ago from a dealership who sold it cheap because they thought the turbo was blown. Turned out to just be the math causing it to be in limp mode. Sure, as of now the turbo is actually dying, but that's beside the point. We've done a lot to this car, both cosmetically and under the hood. During all of that, there's one aspect of the car that's remained exactly the same.
This car has some truly awful paint.
The previous owner resprayed the car with no prep and, to my knowledge, no plan. There was no clear coat, it's peeling everywhere, and it's not even the right shade. Up close, it's horrible. From far away, it just looks matte.
And it looks like the previous owner basically applied it with a paintbrush. Since the paint's peeling, what I want to do and what I want to know could literally make this so much worse than it already is. But honestly, I really just want to find an answer to one question.
It's really a simple question, but there's a lot that can go wrong. So I see it as more of an experiment, a learning experience, if you will. And the only way to really find an answer is to get started.
So as cool as this arrow is, we can't have it on the car when we wrap it. Thankfully, it's all bolt-on.
If we stand any chance at actually getting this wrap to look good, the first thing we need to do is take off basically everything we're not wrapping. The easiest of which is the custom arrow from Splitter Gang. If you remember back when I designed all this, I designed it to be bolt-on, so really removing it is a very quick process. Though we are definitely going to replace the hardware when we reinstall it.
We also got to remove the skirts, so let's do that next. Finally have all the arrow off, but that's not everything we need to do. Now that that's good, we got a couple more things to remove. We got to remove all the grills, as well as some dental floss to remove the logos.
And on top of that, we can't forget this temporary broken wing that we have on the back. Thankfully, this thing was hardly held on. And for that matter, neither are the grills. They're really only held in with a couple clips, all of which come out easily with a little bit of persuasion. The hardest grill to remove is by far the main one. However, since we have an aftermarket one, the clips are a little bit different than factory, meaning it's just as simple as pulling on it. The logos, however, were pretty stuck. It took a lot of floss to get them off, but they did eventually make their way loose. I will say this, if you are ever planning on painting a car or having it painted, let this be a lesson. Prep your car and remove the logos. I genuinely think it would take longer to mask off the logos like they did than to just simply remove and reinstall them. But such is life. Even though we're just going to try to wrap the car, we're still going to take the prep seriously. How you start any project very much so dictates how the final result looks, or at least that's how I see it. I should also mention that I removed both the rear license plate and the plate holder in the front. At this point, the car is pretty naked. There's obviously more we can remove, like the headlights, taillights, and the mirrors, but if we remove those and then wash the car, we're just asking for a bad time. So, in other words, this car is ready for the next step. To get the wrap to stick and look good on a panel, we're gonna have to do a bit of prepping. Any sort of dirt or debris will be shown through the wrap, so the first thing we need to do is just do a preliminary rinsing of the car to get as much of it off as we can. I am by no means an expert, in fact I've only wrapped one car, and that was entirely for the sake of learning. My approach for that was, however, fairly solid. I started by simply washing the entire car, and obviously since wrapping a car takes a while, especially if you're new to it and you're learning, dust is going to accumulate over the car again and again between each individual piece you wrap. So the best approach isn't to fully clean the car now and expect it to stay that way, but rather to clean each panel right before you wrap it. So the car is relatively clean now. My goal was mostly just to get off all the main dirt, but in other words, we're ready to get inside and start prepping for actually wrapping the first panel. It sure sounds like we're close to getting started, but there's actually a few more things we have to do to prep each individual panel because of how the previous paint job went. Since the previous owner didn't prep the car or spray any sort of a clear coat, the car is covered in orange peel. Plus, we've got the peeling to worry about. So to really prep this car, we're going to need to do a fair amount of sanding. For the most part, vinyl will not hide the imperfections underneath it. So if your car is covered in orange peel or has peeling paint, that's going to be shown through the vinyl. I definitely don't want that. So the quality of our finish is going to be entirely dependent on the quality of the surface we put it on. So we're going to have to go get some sandpaper and wet sand everything. Like the whole car. And then anything that's peeling, we're going to have to feather sand so that has less of a chance to come up. But either way, we gotta go get some supplies. And in order to actually get those supplies, I vote we take Old Faithful. While at the store, I picked up a number of things. This is tack cloth. It does one job very well. Removes dust. I also picked up a couple different grades of sandpaper. I'll try 600 to feather sand all the peeling parts, and then 1000 and 2000 grit to wet sand all of the orange peel. We are still missing a couple parts though. You kinda need vinyl to wrap a car. And to understand why we're going with Vivid, let's take it back, specifically to last year. I had a much smaller channel and I decided that I wanted to learn to vinyl wrap. My S4 had peeling clear coat, so I decided to buy some Vivid vinyl and wrap my car myself. It took a long time, and there was a ton of learning in the entire process. I redid panels over and over again, until eventually, the car looked absolutely stunning, and it still does to this day. I documented that entire wrap journey, and somehow, despite my channel being small, Vivid not only saw it, but wanted to send me vinyl to do my TT. Fast forward a couple months, we had a couple different samples in hand, and we tested a few out on the hood of the car. The color we're going with is one of these. Behind the scenes, I ended up making a decision and sent that off to them. Fast forward a couple months again, and they sent me a bunch of tools to wrap the car along with the vinyl itself. I could not believe it. Imagine the faith it takes to send this much stuff to some random person on the internet. But they did, and I can't thank them enough for it. Ignoring winter when it was too cold to wrap the car brings us to today. I still have all of the tools. Everything they sent that I will need to wrap this car. And you've probably seen me use a lot of these in the videos since. So when I say that I really do appreciate their help, I genuinely mean it. Taking these into account, we can move on. I would like to start with the hood, and that'll make sense why in just a second. As far as prep, we're going panel by panel. Most panels on this car will require both wet sanding and feather sanding. We're going to cover feather sanding in extensive detail in the upcoming episodes, but in general, it's basically just going to help us blend in the areas where the paint has started to peel. Wet sanding is a lot simpler though. Using high grit sandpaper, a sanding block, and water, you're able to basically polish out a surface. This removes the imperfections, including orange peel, and makes the surface smooth. In our case though, the smoother we can get the surface, the better the wrap is going to look. Well, since the hood's prepped, I guess it's time we talk about the vinyl itself. After all, you're probably wondering what color I went with, and I'm actually proud of myself. I had the willpower not to open this for the entirety of winter. Instead, I just labeled it and put it in the back of every video I've made since, though I'm actually kind of curious if anybody noticed it.
Wait, what's going on with the camera? So why is this black and white? It's actually intentional, and don't worry, the whole video is not going to be like that. This is just for a little bit. I firmly believe that you can't really judge how a vinyl looks until it's on a car. So, we're going to put a panel on before we actually reveal the color, because I think that's the only fair way to do it. And we're gonna do the hood.
Before you skip forward in the video to see the color, just hold your horses. Black and white is almost a forgotten medium. It really is beautiful. So if you take anything away from this, watch more black and white movies. This is one of the products that Vivid sent me, and it's called Dose. What it is basically a chemical treatment that you can put on your car to prep the surface. I used it right before I used the tack cloth in place of isopropyl alcohol, and it works really, really well. The next video in this series is going to be entirely about wrapping techniques. This video is more about the plan of attack, the prep, and the parts we're using. So don't worry, I'll definitely be explaining all of this in great detail. That's just such a big topic that it deserves its own video. Hoods are honestly one of the easier parts of a car to wrap, especially if they're anything like the TT and don't have any harsh angles and are for the most part flat. The hardest part is when you work solo getting it glossed out for the first time. My tactic was to lay it down over the hood, undo the backing so it would actually stick, and then go side to side and alternate between lifting it up and pulling it tight. When it starts to adhere to the surface, you can go through with a squeegee and tack it down. The squeegee is what pushes out all of the bubbles. If you don't use that, you will have bubbles and you'll be hating yourself later. While the S4 turned out good from a wrap perspective, if you consider it was my first time, there are a lot of imperfections. So while I don't expect this to be perfect, my only real goal wrapping the TT is that I get better.
We finished the hood. I was initially a little worried about the color, but I think we made the right decision. This is going to be different, and it's going to look very cool. I, however, am going to have to end this episode here, specifically because I was hired to direct a music video. More on that later. So I have to go run a shoot, and I am on the clock for that, so I have to get going right now.
Before I leave, I guess I should fix the color though. This is Ultra Gloss China Blue, and I absolutely love it. My favorite part about it is that it looks completely different depending on the level of light that you're in. It's got this muted steel gray look whenever you're in the shade or any sort of overcast, and when you're in direct sun, it's a pastel cotton candy blue. Plus, since it's part of their Ultra Gloss line, it's got this crazy glossy finish. And in combination with the wet sanding we did, the reflections make this car look better than it ever has, considering it's been basically matte finish for the entirety of the time I've owned it. That purple we were looking at would have been really cool, but that was a completely different line of film. And the main issue they were telling me is the way that one pulls on the car would have likely just torn off the rest of the paint. So to give this experiment the best possible chances to succeed, we went with the China Blue. And I think we definitely made the right choice. This car is going to look so good. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like and subscribing for more. I've got a lot of work to do and a lot planned for this channel and all of my cars in the future, so I hope you're as excited as I am. Either way, I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day.